So back again, and we're going to do the nervous system 2. Okay, so we're just going to finish this off. Share my screen. Okay. A second to get everything moved around here. All right. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're going to talk about sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems and a little bit of the anatomy or the physiology of the brain and spinal cord. Okay, so both the spinal cord and the brain are protected by bone and are wrapped in protective membranes known as meninges. So if you're familiar with meningitis, there's both bacterial and viral meningitis forms, and that is an inflammation and an infection in the meninges, or the protective membranes around the brain. Okay. All right, so then we have our brain tissue. We talked about this a little bit in the last section. We've got our gray matter, consists of cell bodies and short unmyelinated sections or axons. And then we have the white matter that is myelinated. So we have those nodes of Ranvier with the saltatory conduction, and they run together in bundles called tracts. Okay. All right, let's do the matching. So the thalamus is G. The cerebrum is B. Our medulla oblongata, H. Cerebral cortex is D. The ventricles are A. There are ventricles in the heart as well. So just keep that in mind. Slightly different function and obviously different location. Hypothalamus, that is F. Cerebellum is E. And finally, the corpus callosum is C. Okay, quite a bit of vocabulary there to remember and identify, but you will need to remember it. Okay. Primary control areas. Okay, so speaking of the primary control areas of the brain, these are found on both sides of the hemisphere, or both hemispheres, so both on the right and the left side of the brain, and they control the opposite side of the body, which you're probably already aware of. So your left hemisphere controls the right side of your brain, and the right hemisphere controls, body. Left hemisphere, right side of the body, right hemisphere, left side of the body, okay? But these control areas are located in both. They're regions of the cerebral cortex that control specific functions. That's probably the best way to put it. Just give me a minute while I have to write this out. Okay. All right. So let's look at the primary motor area. This is often called as well, you may see it referred to as the primary motor cortex. Okay. And this is voluntary. This is where those voluntary commands to the skeletal muscles start. So for you to write or lift your hand or stand up or exercise or any of those things, That's all voluntary control from that's made possible through skeletal muscle. And so the primary motor area, or the primary motor cortex, is where those commands start. Then we have the primary somatosensory area. This is where sensory information from the skin, from skeletal muscle, is where it arrives and gets processed. Okay. So why are certain areas of your body more sensitive than others? This is actually an interesting question, and it really has to do with the size of the area that's devoted to, the size of the area in the brain that's devoted to that particular body part, okay, if that makes sense. So if something tends to have more sensitivity, then it's got more of the primary cortex devoted to it, okay? So I'm trying to, you can kind of look here at some of how that's divided up, okay? So obviously we're not going to be doing this groups of two thing in partners, but this is a way, I mean, it's a worthwhile way for yourself, because again, it's another level of connection between what you're seeing and hearing in lecture and then what you're actually processing. But you can test the sensitivity on different parts of your body using, in this case, like a mechanical pencil. You could use a regular pencil too. Mechanical is just because you can have the point but not have lead extending. And then you would try that on palm of the hands, and then you would do in the middle of the back, in the neck, in the arm. And you could also do where you can tell if there's more than one poke in different areas or not when you're doing the pencil test. And then you can kind of use that information you gathered from your experiment to see if you do notice a difference in sensitivity between the palm of your hand, the back of your neck, your arm, stuff like that. Okay, let's talk about the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system contains the nerves of the body. And this definition for nerves, we kind of talked about it in the last, actually, maybe I didn't go over that. I guess that wasn't covered in the last one. But nerves are just bundles of axons that are going to be surrounded by connective tissue. Tissue, okay? So nerves are going to carry information both to the central nervous system and then away from the central nervous system. And we talked about the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system in the last lecture. Okay, so some points to remember regarding this. We're going to look at two different groups of nerves. Ugh, hang on. All right, so we're going to look at cranial nerves. Which, as you can see, are right here. Okay, so we've got the cranial nerves, which are going to be located at the base of the brain. And there are 12 pairs of them. Again, because you've got both sides of the body to control. Okay. They relay info to and from the head and the neck. Okay. So the cranial nerves are head, neck, and face, okay? Two from head, face, like head, shoulders, knees, and toes, except head, neck, and face, and nothing. Anyway, okay, so then we also have our spinal nerves. There's more of these. Spinal nerves actually come in 31 pairs, and they branch off from each side of the spinal cord, okay? Sorry if you can hear background noise. I kind of have a lot of background noise in my house tonight. Okay, and so the spinal nerves are going to relay information to and from the rest of the body. Okay, so remember that cranial is head, neck, and face, and the spinal nerves are every place else. So I'm gonna leave this PowerPoint here for a minute. Maybe. I've got to clear this. Because I want to attempt to show you something. Maybe, hopefully. Let's get this out of the way. I don't think I'm gonna be able to find exactly what I'm looking for, which is too bad. Hang on just a second. This will do. Yes, warning, I looked up cadavers, as you probably can see by now. If you haven't taken anatomy yet, you're gonna see this anyway. But I'll start with this image. It's not quite the one I was looking for. Please move. You don't need to worry about trying to look at the labels on these because I know it's blurry, but you can see these lines, these yellow lines pointing to the different nerves in the base of the brain. It's the cranial nerves. And then here you can see the spinal cord beginning to extend, and you can see some of the branching nerves in the spinal cord that come out. Let me see if I can find. There's this really cool image, and maybe you guys have seen it. It's of just the nerves in the body. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. This is what I wanted. All right. So these nerves have been carefully teased loose, although we're still not seeing everything, but have been teased loose from a human body. Cranial nerves up here, and then we have the spinal cord, and we've got its nerves branching off from the different locations on the spinal cord. So another image. Gotta love this, right? I love this stuff. Or is that just me that loves this stuff? I have this app. I think it's from the University of Chicago. It's a medical examiner, And anyway, it's an autopsy thing. It's an app that lets you watch autopsy videos. Yes, I'm utterly bizarre, but it's freaking amazing. Anyway, here we go. We can see more of the nerves that are extending off the spinal cord here. So branching off. And that is what we are when we're not surrounded by skeleton and other tissues. It's just it. There's the nervous system. Pretty dang amazing, if I do say so myself. And I do. All right. Having seen it in the actual body, let's go back and I'll finish off our lecture here. Give me a sec to get it set back up again. Okay. So now let's talk about peripheral nervous system divisions. Sorry, loud background. Ignore. Peripheral nervous system divisions. So we have afferent and efferent pathways. Okay, one with an A, one with an E. Good times. Afferent pathways. So this is going to be over the sensory nerves. And they're going to relay sensory signals from the body, okay, from the body to the central nervous system. Loud conversation that's not supposed to be happening out there. Must have been funny. Okay, and so as far as where these signals go, they're going to enter in through the spinal cord via something called the dorsal root, or sometimes called the dorsal horn. Now I'm listening to this conversation. Okay. All right. So then we have the efferent pathway with our E. And these are going to be over our motor nerves. Remember, the motor nerves are the ones that are actually going to receive the signal to do something, okay, to move. They relay responses, again, from the central nervous system. This is going from to the effectors. Come back, okay. So in order, one of the ways you can remember the difference between afferent and efferent is that efferent, EFF, goes to the effectors. Remember that effectors are muscle and organs and anything that has the ability to move and respond to the signal sent from the central nervous system. Okay, glands, things like that. These signals are going to exit the spinal cord through the ventral root, or sometimes called the ventral horn. Having a, it's just getting louder and louder. Okay, the spinal cord from or via the ventral root / ventral horn. Okay. Afferent sensory nerves from body to CNS. Efferent from CNS to the body, to the effectors. Okay. So cranial nerves can be a mix of sensory nerves, motor nerves, or both. Okay, all kinds of stuff happening in there. All right. Peripheral nervous system, motor, we're gonna break these down into a couple more. So we've got motor efferent pathways. These are relating to the somatic motor nerves, somatic meaning body, And they are going to relay information from the central nervous system to the skeletal muscles. And again, skeletal muscles are part of our voluntary muscle system that we have control over moving. So responses then are both conscious, we're aware of them, and aware of making them. Wait, I left that out. I spelled that wrong. S. I always want to leave the S out. Conscious and voluntary. There is an exception to this because it's science. We've got to have exceptions. And that includes our reflexes, our skeletal muscle reflexes. Reflexes are involuntary. So if you've ever been to the doctor and you have to sit with your legs hanging over the table and they whack your knee and your leg kicks, that is an involuntary reflex. They do the same thing with babies when they're born. My goodness, watching for reflexes. This is a mess, you guys. We're gonna hang. We're gonna get through this, despite the insane chaos happening in the background. Although I'm going to remind my husband that I'm lecturing right now. Welcome to Mom Life. Hashtag Mom Life. Okay, moving along. The autonomic motor nerves. These are going to relay information from the central nervous system to smooth muscles. Smooth muscles we don't have control over. They just do their thing without us having to think about them. Therefore, they are unconscious and involuntary. Okay. Unconscious, I guess we could also say subconscious, huh? We're not aware of them. Okay, we're not doing it on purpose. So when it comes to our sympathetic nerves are active during times of emergency. When we think about the sympathetic nervous system, we can think about like the fight or flight response. That's the body's kind of automatic response to stress. Okay, so anything that has your body kind of ramped up, we're dealing with the sympathetic nervous system, nerves of the sympathetic nervous system. They come from the thoracic and lumbar regions of the spinal cord. I'm not going to go the whole way. I was going to show you an image. Spinal cord, you've got your cervical area, and then it's going to move down into thoracic, and then it moves farther down at the bottom to the lumbar. And so it's those bottom two regions that the sympathetic nerves are coming from. Okay. And again, this is something that we associate with a fight or flight response because it releases a hormone called norepinephrine, or it triggers the release. That norepinephrine is going to work on effectors, and the effectors then will have their own set of responses and reactions that cause the physical symptoms that you experience with fight or flight, or again with exercise or excitement, heart palpitations, you might feel a little bit shaky, short of breath, things like that. Most processes in the body are a cascade effect or a domino effect, where you have one thing, usually sensory input, that causes something to happen that causes all these other things to happen down the line. And so in this case, the sensory input that's coming from the sympathetic nerves gets sent out to all the effectors in the body, releasing norepinephrine into them. And then when the effectors get hold of that norepinephrine, they have their own series of steps that they take. Then we have the parasympathetic nervous system. So when we're looking at these are things that are happening usually when you're resting, digestion, things like that, just kind of basic underlying necessary life functions. Okay. These come from the brainstem and the sacral regions of the spinal cord. The brainstem isn't really spinal cord, but the sacral region of the spinal cord. And these release something called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine you're going to hear more about when we get into muscle, which is coming up this week, and we'll look at what acetylcholine does in muscle responses. Okay. Okay, so notice this red box, sympathetic and parasympathetic effects. You need to know the effects of the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system on these effectors. Okay, so study these. When it comes to the heart, the sympathetic nervous system is going to cause the heart rate to increase. Remember, fight or flight. Whereas the parasympathetic nervous system is going to pull that rate down, like when you're at rest. The arteries are going to contract, increasing blood pressure when you're dealing with the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. But they dilate or relax during, or if it's affected by the parasympathetic nervous system. Lungs, bronchial muscle relaxation. This can cause that because it's relaxed, those muscles are relaxed. When parasympathetic is affecting it, they tighten. So you get kind of more of the longer, slow breaths. The GI tract, digestion, decreased motility. So stuff, energy towards that gets redirected to other things in the body. So you get decreased motility, decreased digestion. And parasympathetic, when you're resting, is increased motility. So you have more digestion happening because the energy can be focused there. You can look at this along with the rest. Kidneys, for sympathetic, you're going to have a decreased urine production and increased urine production with parasympathetic. So you can look through those. Actually, I think I do want to try to share. Screen one more time. I don't. Did I not spell it right? It doesn't sound right. I didn't spell it right. I've got so many other things that come up on my screen when I have to share that I can't always see what I'm doing. I don't want all of that. So I told you about these different sections here: cervical, thoracic, and lumbar. Cervical is up at the top section. Thoracic is like rib cage type area. Lumbar is the lower back. When you are talking about sacral, let me mark this up, such as what we saw with the parasympathetic nervous system, you are looking at this area here. Okay? It's the walo, the tailbone, and all those nerves that come off of that. Okay. And we're going to go back again and finish this off. Give me a second. Like I said, I got to get it all set back up. Oh, figures. I showed you a labeled picture, and now here it is. But it's okay because it doesn't have the sacral showing here, which again would be down here in this area at the bottom. Okay. All right. So kind of looking at some of these nerves and what they do. The sympathetic ganglia, this is referring to all of the nerve bundles and clusters that are part of the sympathetic nervous system. And so you can kind of follow the path of these different sections to see what they affect and where. It's color-coded. You can see that the cervical nerves are going to be green, thoracic, lavender, and lumbar is pink. Okay, and then you can watch how those break out from there. And then you have labeled here the vagus nerve, which is very important. And when you're in anatomy, you will see that teased out, usually from the neck. What else do I want to point out? Down here is a key. So these blue lines that are coming out are using acetylcholine, which we know is coming out of the parasympathetic nervous system. And this kind of, I don't know, what color is that? Maroon? That maroon kind of color is our norepinephrine that's coming from the sympathetic nervous system. Okay? All right. That was insane. Like, so much noise in the background. But we're done. We made it through it, and that is what my house sounds like most of the time. I'm assuming you can hear most of it, because when I go back and replay these, if there's noise in the background, I hear it all. So you guys probably hear it all too. Yeah, that's what life usually is, but at this hour of night, because I'm on Central Time, it's usually quieter because the kids are in bed. But it's my youngest son's birthday tomorrow. He's going to be 9, and I can't believe it. My baby's 9. It's like insane. So they're kind of excited for all the festivities tomorrow. All right. As always, if you have questions or concerns, please let me know. And I will be back this week with more on muscles.